Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday, and welcome to this discussion on transitions with Lisa Sarimi. My name is Elise Ekman, and I am on the Access Elite team that has brought this event to you today. For those of you who aren't familiar, Access Elite is a health and wellness company that provides on-demand wellness content, same-day prescription delivery, and facilitates live virtual events such as these that you can tune into every day, as well as much more. We're so glad that we can facilitate this event for you today and bring a little bit of positivity and connection to your day. So I just want to take a moment to thank each of you for being here. And with that, I am thrilled to introduce our guest today. Lisa is a yoga instructor, marriage and family therapist, and a transformation coach. And I think she's working on a couple other certifications as well. So at the start of this session, I just want to mention that I'm going to be including some journal prompts into the chat. These are directly from Lisa, and they are sort of a takeaway for you so that you can expand on what you learned from this discussion today.
Thank you so much, Elise. It is such an honor to be here with all of you and discussing something that feels just so alive and present in a lot of our lives through what we're all going through together with the COVID-19. So today, we are going to get into a definition of what a transition is. And we're also going to define what transformation is. And we're going to look at the phases that exist in both of these platforms. Next, we'll overlay the two together and we'll integrate in some symbolic patterns of the butterfly, or really the caterpillar to the butterfly's metamorphosis. And we'll look at how that applies to where we are collectively as well as individually. So if you don't have a pen and paper, grab one, or maybe you use your electronic devices so that you can really harness this time together to really serve you to the fullest. So just looking at what are some types of major life transitions. And I also want to encourage you, if there's anything that you want to contribute through the chat that you think of that maybe I don't have on a slide, please do, so that we can all participate together. So shifts in our status from an I to a we, or a we to an I, meaning divorce and marriage, that's one type of transition. Children having a child, or maybe having the child leave the home as an empty nester. Death, whether it's a transition of somebody that we love, or even maybe a furry pet loved one, right? Any shifts in our health, whether it's a new diagnosis with a chronic disease or something acute. Shifts in our financial realm, impacting our jobs, or sometimes we're inheriting something coming in. And then, of course, our phases of life that are constantly happening, midlife, retirement, and adolescence, just to name a few. And then there's things like COVID-19, where all of a sudden, overnight, there's this massive change in the way it is kind of trickling down, is affecting each of us differently, uniquely. And then, of course, it's also affecting us globally and collectively. And then there's other types of big change that can come into our lives. So maybe there's some types that you're thinking about right now. But just looking at this overall, these major life shifts that we experience. And then there's some commonalities when we're going through transitions. First, a transition really is an indicator of big change. The transitional piece is where we're catching up to the change that has occurred. A lot of time that's an internal process. Transitions and change, really it starts with an ending, right? Demarking a new beginning. And there is this continuous cyclical nature that occurs. So as an individual, we have to immediately begin to find ways to adapt, to adjust, and accommodate to the change. And you can think about just like COVID-19 and what's happened overnight. So many things have changed for so many of us. And just thinking about the ways you've adapted and you've adjusted and have had to accommodate to this change. So when there is a major life transition, there are a lot of dimensionalities that influence the way they impact us. So I'm going to share about a personal transition I had back in 2008. So some of you might remember the housing bubble, and I was in real estate at that time as an investor. So looking at some of these dimensions, you can see them right here on the PowerPoint. As I went into 2018, there was this moment where my life as a real estate investor changed. And it was a moment where I just realized that like I had to go in a different direction. I was over leveraged and I had to make a change. Um, and so it was not voluntary. This was an involuntary thing that was occurring, and it was something that actually for me kind of unraveled gradually. I went through a painful process. I had about 6 properties in my real estate portfolio. And over the next few years, I went through a painful process of dissolving this portfolio and working with the banks. So this was something that was impacting, again, not global, but locally, our real estate markets were heavily being impacted, and then that was having an impact on us individually. And for me, it was a very major shift in my whole life from this point forward. It was a very big transformative shift, and at the time, it was absolutely uncomfortable. I felt completely out of control, right? So sometimes these transitions happen, and sometimes we feel like we have some sense of control, and sometimes there's absolutely no sense of control. And then the level of resistance that arises is impacted by all of these elements. For me, it felt really permanent. It felt like what was happening was literally just permanently going to affect my life. And in some ways it did, right? And then in other ways, it was temporary also. It was a phase, it was a season that I was going through, and it was an opportunity to evolve and to grow myself as a human being. The desirability is also an influence. For me, it was not desirable. I had this big, massive plan on how my real estate investing was going to set me up to do a lot of other things, and that just didn't turn out right. So, looking at the coronavirus and just maybe looking at, for most of us, this is not a voluntary thing. It is something that happened quickly, and then all these secondary layers might start to unravel gradually. It has affected us individually and communally. And in many cases, there are places where we literally have no control. And then there are some other things that we are able to control. Hopefully, this will mostly be temporary, although there might be some permanent impacts that it has. And I will go ahead and assume from a desirability factor that it was nothing that any of us really desired. Moving on. Now talking about resistance. So of course, resistance is connected to that something I don't want, that pushing away. And as you can see with that image, right, sometimes it can feel really heavy. So how does it show up and how does it affect us? It affects us physically. So when you feel resistance, you might notice a contraction in the body. You might notice felt tension and stress. Emotionally, you might feel things like fear and sadness, anxiety, rigidity, or constrictiveness altogether. And then mentally, there's this desire to calculate and control the outcome. And there's this difficulty a lot of times to sit and lean into trusting. So these are some ways that resistance shows up. So you might just take a moment and ask yourself, how is resistance present for you right now? And I want to share this quote as you're kind of sitting with that. If you feel inspired to write anything down, please do, by Christina Baker Klein. Just really felt resonance here. I am halfway between two worlds, the known and the unknown. I feel as transparent as the wind, as if my spirit is hovering in the sky, waiting to land. I am driving toward a future I cannot see, leaving behind a past that already feels distant. Nothing is clear, and yet the trees are sharp against the sky. I can see the hard outlines of everything. So there's a couple experts that I've been researching, William Bridgers and Bill Ratliff, that speak a lot on transitions. And it was interesting that they both kind of break it down into three phases. The first phase, an ending. And I use the image of kind of that explosion on the lower left-hand side because it's kind of like there's an ending, and that represents the ending of the wholeness, which we're going to also look at again in the future here shortly. And something is split into two, right? So one becomes two. Phase two, wilderness or neutral phase. This is, in my opinion, one of the hardest parts of transition because it's that space, just like that trapeze artist down there, where you're in between. You quite haven't fully left into this new place to emerge, and yet you quite aren't there either, and nothing necessarily looks clear. And so it can be very uncertain, and that can bring up a lot of fear, and it can really threaten our sense of safety. And then from that, new beginnings, right? Something is born. So these are the phases of transitions. And then I want to just take a moment. We're going to look at what are the phases of transformation and what is transformation. So defined, it is a change in form, appearance, nature, or character. And how I think it is different from change is transformation is more of a process. Change happens, but transformation it's an alchemical process that is very well described through the metamorphosis of the caterpillar into the butterfly and a lot of other species in nature that also go through this process. So you might think just personally of a transformative experience you've had personally throughout your life, where a life change has had to propel you and you have been forever altered from that experience. So for me, when I went through that experience with the real estate market, I was altered forever. And I had so many breakthroughs in so many ways. I definitely went in one form and came out another, which is partially what has led me here in this moment with you all. So what does transformation mean to you? And if COVID-19 was your portal for transformation, what would that look like? Maybe taking a moment and allowing yourself to sit with some of these questions and journal on them. If you could forget who you think you are just for a moment, that identity that we form that we're so attached to, what would become possible? Who could you be? And so maybe you're writing and you can continue writing, and I'm going to start to speak about the archetype of metamorphosis, deepening that layer, the understanding of transformation and how it works here in the cycle of a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. And you'll notice that in a complete metamorphosis, the species, the animal, it looks very different in every one of the stages, and we'll get into those stages in a moment. Well, actually, the moment is now. So looking over at the left, you'll see the leaf and you'll see the eggs. And there are those eggs just getting ready to hatch, and what comes out, the larva. And the caterpillar is what the larva is. And it's like on this single focused mission from the moment it is birthed, it is on the mission for food because it wants to grow, right? So that's all it focuses on. And in some of the species, it's even one specific type of nourishment until eventually one day it is time for the caterpillar to shed its skin for the last time. It will attach itself to either a branch or a leaf, something safe, and it begins to shed the skin for the last time, and it begins to create the cocoon or the chrysalis, this protective space for the metamorphosis and the alchemical process to occur. And actually, once that chrysalis is built, it begins to release enzymes on the inside, and it completely dissolves itself. It becomes, you could say, butterfly soup in a way. And from that butterfly soup, there are some imaginal discs that remain. And those imaginal discs begin to birth the antennas and the form of the butterfly. And the butterfly continues to evolve and develop in this chrysalis until one day, the fourth phase of metamorphosis, the butterfly emerges. And it comes out with its wings, and they don't come out nice and big and spread out just like you see here in the image. They come out wet and heavy, and in some cases it looks like they have one wing, but they allow the blood to begin to circulate, and they begin to pump the wings, and then one day they just take off. They don't even think about it. They just trust and they fly. They leave the world of the earthly creature, earthbound of the caterpillar, and they become the winged, and very different perspectives that they have as they move forward. So now the overlay of the two. So we could say, if we were looking at a transition of life as portals for our transformation, for our alchemical metamorphosis, the first phase is the portal of change. It's when that larva first comes out of the egg, and we're at the impact of the change. And it's very, very shocking, and it's very, very disorienting. And then the second phase, the portal of adjustment. As the caterpillar is one focus in this phase, so are we. Because here, the change has occurred, and now all we're trying to figure out how to do is to adjust to this change, to find our new normal, or to go back what we hope our normal could be, right? And so there's a lot of challenges that we're moving through in this space, and then we evolve into the portal of surrender. So this is kind of where the fight stops. And it's where the chrysalis is in the journey of metamorphosis. And it's where we go. And we need a safe space and container so that we can alchemically transform, let go of the old, and to step into and emerge into the new, which is the butterfly. The fourth phase is the portal of emergence. And each one of these phases and spaces are opportunities for transformation, and they're portals. They give us the opportunity, right? Rather than us having to generate them, it's happening to us. So when we go through these types of transitions in our life, the level of consciousness we bring to the space is going to support us in this process of transformation. So there's a lot more that I could have dove into today, which we will not have time for. I just wanted to give us a moment to do a little bit of breath work to kind of invite in a calmer state in our bodies before we dive into a little more journaling. So I'd like you to find a place on your body where you can feel your pulse. So maybe it's right here on your wrist, or maybe it's the throat, wherever you can find your pulse, and see if you're okay and you feel okay, either soften or close your eyes and allow your attention to start to come inward. And as the attention comes inward, notice the pulse that is pulsating through you right now. I would like to demonstrate the power of our breath. Let's take just a couple cleansing breaths together. Inhale, fill up your belly, fill up the ribs, fill up your chest. Audibly exhale, just let that breath go. Take another breath in deep into the belly, filling yourself all the way up, almost to the crown. And exhale, feeling the bones get heavy when you release the breath and you let it go. Take one more round like that on your own. And as you're doing this round of cleansing breath, continue to keep the awareness to the pulsation that's moving through your body. And then we're going to slow the breath down. So I'd like you to take an inhale through the nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale through the nose for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale through the nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale through the nose for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Continue breathing on your own. And you don't have to count, but see if you can energetically or just feel the exhales longer than the inhales. And as you're doing this breathing, I'd like you to just notice what happens to the pulsation of the heart, of the blood. Notice how maybe when you're exhaling, it gets a little slower. And then as you're ready, you might release the pulse and maybe flutter your eyes back open, and we all come back together. So some questions one might want to use as a way to kind of deepen one's own personal experience to make it more transformative. When going through transition, this is the first 7 or so questions. We've got a couple more slides. So I want you, as you look at this, just for right now, to pick one, the one that's jumping up out at you. And then, as Elise mentioned, the questions are also on the chat box, so you can always copy and paste them and deepen your work a little later or use them for any transition you might be going through at any time. So I'd like to just give you a moment here to be able to work with one of these. And some of these questions, I'll just kind of speak them out while maybe you're prompting and writing. Is where am I? What do I need to leave behind? Who do I want to be? Where is there room for growth? How am I going to get there? Who do I want by my side? What is my why? I just want to acknowledge, I know we don't have a ton of time together, so I apologize that the depth of the work that we can do together today is kind of really more shallow, but hopefully gives you something so that you can deepen this work for yourself. And then some questions that one might ask for transformation. These are prompts. In the great mystery and time of uncertainty, I feel the change in my life is in my life, what is ending and what is being birthed. How do these changes influence my relationship to feeling safe? Do I feel safe? Where do I see myself in the phases, or what portal am I in now? Some of the emotional states I have been experiencing are. I'll give you a couple more minutes here. Really big questions or prompts. So maybe they're just sparking a little inspiration for deeper exploration. Oops. Uh-oh. And these next ones are really soul tending, I call them, because I feel that they ask us to kind of dive into those deeper layers, which I refer to as the soul. The longing in my heart is calling for. In this process of metamorphosis, I feel what I want to say to myself is, what I want to say to humans all around the world is, the gift I want to bring to the world through this experience here on earth is, what is transforming, or what I would like to transform in my life is. Again, just taking some time here. Maybe you feel like it's only enough time to identify the one you feel inspired by. Wherever you're at, just know that it's exactly where you're supposed to be. And then if you feel like you are inspired and you're just in this deep process right now, please continue to write. I just wanted to share a little bit about the way I work and the modalities that I use and why. And that it's really connected to what we were talking about today. So I am a yoga therapist. So I integrate a lot of different yoga practices when I work with people to really tend to the entire being and all the different layers that make up the being. Some of that is the body, some of that is the mind, some of that is the heart, some of that is diving into spiritual, non-dogmatic um, explorations with clients. And some of that is also meditation. Now, think about this. Well, actually, I'll get into that in a minute. And then the other thing that I do is I tie in a lot of depth psychology practices. So that I'm got my degree at Pacifica Graduate Institute, and they are known for their expertise in depth psychology. And if you're not aware of what that is, maybe you're familiar with Carl Jung. We work a lot with the content that's in the unconscious that gets repressed. And there are some of the modalities that I use with clients are like active imagination, personification, expressive arts. And then we tie in myth, metaphor, and symbol into the work that we do. So the yoga practices allow us to really work with our autonomic nervous system. And I don't, again, that's a whole nother thing. We'll save that for another time, maybe with Access Elite. But basically, through the autonomic nervous system, we can work through the body to support experiencing states that give us access to moods like connection, empathy, harmony, contentment. We create a safe container and we learn how to self-regulate so that we are in the agency position of our moods and our behaviors. We increase our awareness, and the container becomes something within instead of outside of us, even when outside there might be a lot of chaos. One of the other reasons I love to bring in the yoga practices is because the depth psychological practices are doing deeper work. So we're able to create that safe chrysalis, so to speak, to do the deeper work. We bring in the imaginal realm, working with that repressed unconscious content, the shadow material, and we help bring it up so that one can integrate it into their experience rather than store it into the body and all the other parts and places we store it. Through personification, we amplify that inner trust, tapping into our inner wisdom that is really messages communicated through the unconscious realm. And through myth, metaphor, and symbol, we are able to deepen meaning and purpose in our lives. I think that was it, yes. Thank you all so much for your time today. I really appreciate being here with you and the platform that Access Elite has provided.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was so informative, and I feel like you've kind of got like all of these different ideas sparked in me and how I can, sort of grow from here. So I certainly feel very inspired and like I got a lot out of this session. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And of course, if you loved this session, be sure to check out accesselitenow.com/events for all of our upcoming and future events. And as Lisa mentioned, hopefully we can get her on the schedule again soon. And otherwise, Lisa is also an Access Elite coach. So you can go to the Access Elite app, and we have special discounted rates for all of the Access Elite members. I'm going to go ahead and drop those into the chat right now. But Lisa offers Limitless-U coaching and yoga therapy, as well as several other types of services through the Access Elite app. And they are at that Access Elite discounted price. So you can go to accesselitenow.com/sign up, and that is how you can become a member. And here are the other details. I'm also dropping in Lisa's website and her email address if you have any questions for her.
Thank you all so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you again, Lisa. This was great.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.
Okay.